Welcome everyone to episode 38 of the Bunker Talk. So excited to have my good friend Suzette Bravo here. Thank you so much for your time and for coming all the way down here again. Right now we're coming back this way. Tell everyone about yourself, Suzette. Who are you? Who is the wonderful Suzette Bravo?
Oh, thank you. And thanks for having me. This is really fun.
I'm excited.
Your studio is amazing.
Thank you.
And I'm honored to have this conversation with you. So I am a women's leadership, and I am in the process of making a shift now to working with women and young girls, teenagers, because I was finding as I was working with women, some of the issues that we're up against as women are issues that essentially we've been dealing with since we were teenagers. So the catalyst for that was, stop pulling people out of the river, swim upstream and find out why they're falling in. So if we can help them build good belief systems and create good stories when they're younger, they're not looking around when they're in their 40s and their 50s trying to figure out who they are. So I am a fierce advocate for women, for girls, for using your voice, for standing tall, for being an individual, for being whoever you want to be, for loving yourself unconditionally, regardless of who you've been, where you've been, and fully embracing every version of yourself that you've been in your life. I know, it's a tall order. Yeah, I don't do that. I don't. I'm still learning how to do that. And that's kind of how I fell into this is I was doing the work and I was getting connected to a lot of other people that were doing the work. And I found that when I started to tell my story about the things that I had been through in my life, what happened was this really beautiful thing is I would share something. And these are things that I kept buried most of my life because I had so much shame and guilt around some of the things that I'd done. And when I started openly talking about it and sharing that, I can't tell you how many women I would have look at me with tears in their eyes and just say, me too. And there's something so powerful when we give people permission to not be perfect and to have the scars and to show the scars and to learn from the scars. And I also believe that when we've been through hell and we've been through things in our lives, when we come out on the other side, like turn around and put a hand out and help those that are coming up behind you.
I think that's super important to note about if you've figured out the sauce, share it.
Exactly, 100%.
You gotta share it. Yeah. So I think that like you said, the permission aspect of several questions. First of all, do you think that's specific to women? That we need the permission?
No.
Okay.
No, I think men need it as well. And I was listening to a podcast on my drive down here, and there was a shocking statistic in there. The third leading cause of death in teenage boys is suicide. The third leading cause of death. Now, I don't know what the first two are. The third leading cause of death.
That shouldn't be the leading ever.
So, right. So it's boys too.
Okay.
It's boys too.
And so how does someone, because I think I don't have any children. I always have to say, I know I don't have any children. So I couldn't imagine, having to navigate these emotions in youth. Right. And it's funny. I was talking to someone a couple of weeks ago and they had told me that one of the things that makes you face your childhood unresolved issues the most is having your own children.
Oh, 100%. So I have two amazing stepchildren, but I didn't go that road either. And one of the things a lot of my friends who have kids tell me is your primary job as a parent is to screw up your kids. Like you pay it forward. And that's what happens is we learned from our parents, and that's what we turn around and present to our children. And if you've done the work, if you've figured it out, if you have seen how it worked out for you and maybe done some therapy or coaching or whatever and choose to do things differently, I mean, that's beautiful. You break the cycle. Now, maybe you had wonderful parents and that's what you're passing on. But it's all over the place.
And so how does someone, for example, that is now raising a child and also working through it themselves, like how do they create that space while you're healing, trying to I guess offer support. And I know when they're your own children, it's naturally there. But like, how does somebody create that safe space when they haven't figured it out yet?
I think the very first step to that is self-awareness. So we tend to be very reactionary as humans. Something happens and we react and we think about what happened later on. Viktor Frankl wrote an amazing book. And he has a quote in there, and I'm going to butcher it, but the gist of it is, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And it is in that space that we get to choose how we want to respond. And that is where our power lies, is in that space of, do I react or do I respond? And I think
I like that.
for parenting, for everything in our life, we all get triggered. We all have things that come up that trigger us because maybe somebody in second grade said something that we're flashing back to, or it's something that our mothers said to us, or our fathers, peers, whatever. But we all have triggers. And we owe it to ourselves and those around us and our families, and especially our children, to become aware of what those triggers are. Mm-hmm. And maybe those triggers will always be there, but to recognize that it is a trigger and to decide in the moment how you're going to respond to it, because we do have choice. We get to make a choice.
I would assume that when you're not aware that it's a trigger, it's when you react.
100%.
Like, because you're blindsided. But if you're aware that this, affects me, or hearing this, triggers, to say the word again, right? Triggers you in a way, you kind of control the trigger.
Yes, 100%. And in that moment, you get to choose.
Right.
It's like, okay, yeah, I'm triggered. This is really annoying me. Okay, but what is this really? Like, am I really being annoyed by what is going on in this moment? Like, is this what's going on? Or is it the story that I'm telling myself about what's going on?
That.
And this is such a beautiful distinction. And I believe that getting a grasp and honing in on this distinction is the key to a joyous life, is when you can discern the difference between pain and suffering. Pain is inevitable. Things are going to happen in our life that are going to hurt us, that are going to crush us. But the suffering that we have around that pain is what we do to ourselves. And we do that to ourselves through the stories that we tell ourselves about what that pain point is. So you've seen people who have been through horrible tragedies in their life, and they view it as a gift, and they're the most joyous, happy people you've ever met. Mm-hmm. It's about the story that they're telling themselves. You see people that do the opposite. And I'm not saying one is better, or you get to choose how you want to live your life, but it is a choice. And most of the suffering that we endure is because of the story that we're telling ourselves.
That is so deep. It's wild that this is not taught. The concept of, no matter what happens, good or bad, right? Like you said, everyone has a little good, a little column A, a little column B, right? We've got the good and the bad. Some have more of one than the other, but in theory, the general population can agree life is hard. It's just hard.
100%.
It's hard. And the fact that it's a choice, when the first time I heard you say that phrase about the story I'm telling myself it hit me like a ton of bricks, because I realized that it's what I do. It's not even what I do. It's my perception that I allow to continue without like checking it. Like, the act of knowing to ask yourself about, is my perception accurate? I'd never heard of that in my life. I'm 41. No one has ever said to me, man, but have you asked yourself if like your point of view is on an event, on anything, on an argument, on anything, is accurate, or is that the story you're telling yourself?
Right. And that's a game changer. I mean,
it's a game changer.
Think
Suzette.
about all the times that you've been really, really pissed off.
Yes.
And stop and ask yourself, is this true?
Right.
It is a very simple question. Is this true? Now, when we're ramped up and we're emotional, your initial response to that could be, well, hell yes, it's true. Okay, are you sure it's true? And so this is sort of borrowed from the work by a woman named Byron Katie. and it's actually called The Work, and it's 4 steps, but it starts with asking yourself, is this true? And am I really sure that this is true? What is the evidence that this is true? And then an even more powerful question is to ask yourself, who would you be if it wasn't true?
Wow.
Yeah. And that's where this whole thing about permission comes in, because when you think about it, our subconscious brain runs 95% of what we do. You are consciously aware of about 5% of what's going on. Everything else is subconscious. So your subconscious is in there in the background. Basically, you're a little marionette and your subconscious is just pulling all the strings. So until you learn to stop and look around and pay attention, we're just running through life reacting to everything that happens.
So asking that question, you're asking yourself that question. You're asking that 95%, wait a minute, is this real, or are you just, acting a certain way today?
Yeah. And it's like, people say, oh, I had a really bad day today. It's like, really? Did you have a bad day, or did you have a bad 5 minutes that you allowed to hijack the rest of your day? And we get stuck. And again, we get stuck in a story, and we can continue to tell ourselves, oh, this happened, this inconvenience, this, that. And like you said, life is hard. I'm not taking that away from anybody. But at the same time, we create our own suffering when we allow ourselves to only see what's hard, to only see the downside, to only see the negative, and to not allow ourselves to think, what else could this be?
And I, because I know you personally, I know that you have this, it sounds, I don't know that it sounds that way. I just want to make sure I establish this, that you're a person that has introduced this to all of us, this framework of like thinking. And it sounds like it could be a little bit like tough of like, almost like deal with it, move on. But that's not the case. Like, you are also a huge proponent on feeling things all the way through.
Oh, 100%.
And like, so talk to us about that process. Like, how do you do both? How do you question if you're feeling pity for yourself versus feeling all the way through and releasing the emotions?
That's a great question. And I love that you asked that, because there is a fine line, and I think it's different for everybody. And my MO most of my life was, and my best friend and I still joke about this, we'll say to each other, just stuff it down. Just stuff it so far down, like it will never see the light of day. And that's really great. But our emotions and things like that we don't process, that we just look at ourselves and say, just butch up and get over it. Okay, that's fine. But consider you have a closet in your house and you keep throwing junk in there and slamming the door. Eventually, you're not going to be able to fit anything else in there, and the closet's going to explode and the door's going to bust open, and you're going to have to deal with all of it. Our emotions are the same way. We have emotions for a reason. They come up and we feel things for a reason. We are feeling beings as humans. And I am not suggesting that anybody throw... I'm trying to figure out the best way I want to say this. It's not about having pity for yourself. If something happens and you're hurt, that's okay. Allow yourself to feel the emotions and move through it. I tell people all the time, I'm like, if you need to schedule a pity party for yourself, by all means, do it. Order a pizza, binge Netflix, whatever you want to do. Give yourself an hour, 2 hours. Give yourself the rest of the day. Move through it. Feel it. Feel all of it. Cry. Watch a sad movie, whatever you need to do. And then that way, those emotions flow through. And then the next day, you can wake up and you can feel lighter, because I think our emotions make us heavy. And when we process them and we feel them, Lisa and I had a conversation. We were having lunch one day, and I was telling her, I was like, girl, sometimes you just got to cry. Like, the best place to cry is either when you're in your car by yourself or in the shower.
Yeah.
I love to cry in the shower. It's great because there's just something so freeing, and just so to allow yourself to just move through it, because those emotions want to be felt. And when we try to stuff them down, they just get angry over time. Right. And then it starts to show up as annoyance and frustration. And that's why we end up taking things out on people. And we're like, whoa, like, where did that come from?
Well, and that's why, closing the loop, that's why that question is so important, because some of those triggers or those feelings, they're induced by us stuffing other things down.
Right.
So it's like, it's being a human is hard.
It
Emotional
is.
game is so hard, trying to be aware of emotions and, and then also just functioning in every other aspect of life. It's difficult.
And it's also difficult because, especially when you are aware of things, when you start to become more self-aware and maybe you want to have a conversation or you want to share with somebody else what's going on, if that person's not self-aware, that conversation can get very challenging. And that's where, again, the self-awareness and taking responsibility, when we're triggered by something, if you say something that triggers me, it's not your fault that I'm triggered. That's on me. Now, whether or not you're being a nice person or you're being rude or whatever, that's a whole other conversation. Right. But that trigger and how I respond to that is on me. Mm-hmm. And that, again, is where, and this is from, I was listening to, I think it was a podcaster or something. It was Brene Brown. And she was telling a story about her and her husband when they argue. One of the things that they say to each other is, instead of saying, well, you did this or you did that, they will say to each other, the story that I'm telling myself about this is, because we've accepted responsibility.
Mm-hmm. For the reaction.
Right.
Yep.
It's not about what you did. It's about, this is what happened and this is how I'm feeling about it. And it creates a whole different dynamic when you're trying to work through something, because, in any relationship, when there's conflict, it is the two of you, or however many, against the problem. It is not the two of you against each other. So when you can say, okay, this is happening and this is how I'm feeling about it, the other person is not on the defensive. They can sort of step up and say, okay, all right, I get that that's how you're feeling. And then you can start a negotiation or whatever you need to do to solve the conflict. But, we talked earlier, it comes down to self-leadership. Mm-hmm. We have responsibility and we have a choice in how we show up in the world.
Talk about that, because what does self-leadership mean?
Self-leadership is having that awareness. Mm-hmm. Self-leadership is giving yourself a minute to decide how you want to do something and not just blindly reacting and pouring out all over the external world and expecting the external world to bend to how you want things done. As leaders, think about it. As a leader in an organization, you're leading from the front. Well, we have to learn to lead ourselves in the same way. If somebody triggers you, that's on you. Lead yourself through that moment. Lead yourself through that process. If you are hurt or feeling sad or whatever, allow yourself to move through it, but lead yourself through it. And self-leadership is taking responsibility. Self-leadership is finding self-love, finding what you need inside, not expecting the external world to just show up and give you everything that you need. And that's one of the traps I think that we get in as humans. All of us do. We look for validation externally. We look for things outside of ourselves to make us happy. And that's great. But that subconscious mind that runs 95% of what's going on, that subconscious mind knows that all of that external validation is rocky. It can be taken away from you in a heartbeat. So there's no security in that. The only security that you're ever going to have for your own self-love and your own validation is what you give yourself.
I don't know why this is just not a thing. Maybe now, generationally, people are more aware of these things, right? More than ever, more than in the past. Like, I had a great childhood, no major traumas, nothing like that. But these conversations weren't had in my household of like.
They weren't had in anybody's household.
It's so sad to know that, like, I don't have any children. I hope that this is discussed in schools. It's somehow in a curriculum of the power, especially now with social media, where everything is external validation, where you're just looking for the number of likes that you get. Like that is so, it causes impressions in a negative way on us as adults, as grown women. Imagine children. And I know that we're going to go there because I know that you have a big project coming up and we're going to talk about that. But I want to circle back to the self-leadership part. But like, that concept of self-leadership and being in such control of your reactions, your emotions, of being able to regulate your thoughts, of like having almost like a what is that called when you like ballot, not assist a checks and balance, right? Like that type of being able to go back and almost like check yourself, like, well, wait, that was wrong. Why did you react that way? That whole framework, or how did you arrive there? How long did it take you? What did you do to understand this?
That's a loaded question because I'm still working through a lot of it.
Well, I think that's the main answer, is that it never ends.
Yeah, it
doesn't. This doesn't end.
I mean, think about it. We grow and we take in stimulus all day, every single day as humans, as we move through the world. To think that you're the same person that you were even 30 days ago.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And that's, the conversation that we had in the drip around, I've been 1,000 different women. I'll be 1,000 different more. Yes, 100%. And that is when we try to lock into an identity and be a specific person and not allow ourselves that flow, then we're constantly trying to fit ourselves into something that maybe, it's like if you have a child, they're growing, their foot size is changing. They're not going to wear a size 6 shoe for the rest of their life. And as their feet grow, you better get them bigger shoes or they're going to be really uncomfortable. Emotionally, we're the same way. And so I lost my husband in 2013, and I stuffed that so far down. I was so afraid of those big emotions, of that grief. And I basically drank my way through the first couple of years after losing him because I was so afraid to go there. So I did everything that I could to pretend that I was okay, to distract myself from what hurt, and to just be numb, and just not care. And I didn't care. I didn't care about anything. I was highly functioning. I was doing all the things that I was supposed to be doing. If you were watching me, you're like, wow, like she's doing really great. But no, like the struggle was really, really painful. And it wasn't until I did years of therapy. Like I talked to people about this, and I can still, I can rationalize and tell you intellectually, I can intellectualize all of it. I can tell you exactly why I did what I did, all the things, because I was very cerebral about all of it. But it wasn't until I learned to allow myself to feel what I was experiencing that things started to change for me. And I stopped drinking on January 1st, 2017 was my first sober day. And ever since then, and I remember like kind of laughing about it. I was like, oh my God, like now I have to go through these things sober. Like, right. No, like I don't want to do this. And then I learned about somatic healing and started getting into things that took me more into my body, because we have to feel the things that we're going through. We really do. And we are so strong and capable as humans. And the things that we think will kill us won't. They won't. And it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to reach out. And it is okay to lock yourself in your room and just cry until you can't cry anymore, and then come out and start again. And maybe the next day you go back in the room and you cry some more. But you've got to get it out. You've got to let it go. And learning to allow myself to feel was the beginning of the road to healing for me.
Wow. So if you can, what did that look like? How does someone begin to allow themselves to feel?
Permission. You have to give yourself permission. I strongly recommend, especially if you're going through grief or trauma or anything like that, find somebody to support you, whether it's a family member, a partner, spouse, best friend, whatever. Find somebody who can just be there to support you, because those are big emotions, and it's not something that I recommend going through without love and support. And but seeking that and acknowledging that that's what you need. And that's the other thing that I think that society does a bad job it makes us believe that, this being overwhelmed and constantly being busy and not feeling and just being on all the time is like some sort of badge of success.
Right.
And I think it's time that we start kicking back on that, because like you said, being a human is hard, and it's okay to say, hey, wait a minute, like I got to tap out for a couple of minutes. I need a beat before I move forward. And holding space for each other and showing up for each other, especially as women. It's one of the reasons why I just love the Daily Drip so much, because we show up in love and support for each other. And there's not competition. There's just support, and how can I be there for you?
Do you remember what it felt like when you finally felt, and if you could give us like a time frame, right? So you said basically 2017 is when you decided to head first. Like, okay, I'm going to address what I have been stuffing. Do you remember the feeling of the first day where you felt maybe a little above water, like, oh, the work I'm doing has been worth it? Do you remember what that felt like?
I do. It wasn't so much a breakthrough moment. I think what happens is when we start to heal, what I noticed was how I was showing up. And what I noticed was the things that had triggered me the charge wasn't as powerful. And there's still things that'll happen today that I kind of like, you forget that feeling where you feel like somebody kicked you in the gut. But now, like, I have enough awareness. I'm like, okay, like something's going on. Like, what is it? And, listen, there's still times that I get triggered and I go off on a tangent and I come back to center a little bit later, and I'm like, well, okay, I didn't handle that very well. Could have handled that one better. But it was a feeling of being lighter. And it was almost like I could breathe again. And I started to see a future instead of being stuck so much in what I had lost and what I didn't have anymore. I started really looking toward the future and what I wanted to build.
That's beautiful, honestly, to hear it that way. And I know that grief is its own thing of emotions, right? Like that's also another thing of like, there's trauma, emotion, there's grief. There's so many different almost silos too of the things that happen to us, that even if someone has had a bad trauma and then experiences grief, the reactions and the feelings and the emotions aren't the same. So it's like it's difficult to manage, each one individually, all of them together. It's just it's difficult, but I know that, and I know the grief lasts and it carries along. So for you to hear to explain it that way of like the lightness, but also just the mindset shift of like, oh, there is something that I could be happy for again in the future, like the lightness of the future being real.
Right. And then too, there's days where I find myself just stuck. I just feel stuck. And that was kind of my word. I felt like I was stuck. Like if anybody's seen the movie Anchorman, when he is in the phone booth and he's crying on the phone that he's in a glass case of emotion, that's how I feel sometimes. And in those moments, it's like, okay, like this is where we're at. And, I check in with myself. I have my tools. I have all these different tools in my toolbox. So I pull out whichever one is appropriate in the moment and I move through it. Because, one of the stories that I had told myself my whole life was that I'm not a victim. And I am a brilliant compartmentalizer. I can compartmentalize things and put them aside until I feel like dealing with them. And that is a superpower that I developed going through childhood trauma. But that survival skill doesn't really serve me anymore. Right. So now I'm like, there are days I'll have conversations with myself. I'm like, okay, like I can't deal with this right now, but I promise, like we will deal with this in a few hours, or we will deal with this later, or we will carve time out on Saturday and watch a sad movie and we will just cry. But it comes back to that awareness and being aware of what's going on in my body, being aware of what I'm feeling, why I'm feeling it, questioning it, knowing that a lot of times if something doesn't feel good that you're telling yourself, it's probably not true. So dig a little bit deeper and find out what's really going on. But, you know, even with ourselves, like, don't take yourself at surface. Dig deep, ask questions. Don't be afraid to take up space in the room. Don't be afraid to rock somebody else's world because you need help figuring something out. Like, we have to stop minimizing what's going on with us.
I'm really good at that. Minimizing it, not stopping it.
Right.
I'm really good at minimizing it. And I also am a chronic avoider.
Oh, I love avoidance.
Yeah.
Avoidance is the best.
Because you know what I realize is, like, I feel like I'm just like, so, like, everything just rolls off my back. Like, I go through life, like, just, you know, living life. And then I realized, oh, it's not that it's rolling off my back and I'm letting it go. It's just there, like, staring at me in the corner. Like, it's actually just, it is there. I'm just choosing not to deal with it.
Right.
And I'm thinking it's not affecting me.
Right.
And it's not. Don't avoid. You have to address the problem.
You do.
It catches up.
Right.
Eventually.
100%.
Thanks for the therapy session, though. This was great. This was so good. How do you think that all of this that we just discussed, the self-leadership, the awareness, I think people are so unaware. This is the biggest, I think awareness is actually the biggest problem with humanity in general right now.
1,000,000%.
People have zero awareness about themselves. The permissions, the story, all of that stuff. How do you suggest, or how do you think this how do you think that this affects women in business, in their careers? Like, how do you do it all? How do you take on these things that we're learning, that you're discussing personally, and then bridge it over to, like, our business world, where it's like, it's not okay to just cry, right? It's not okay to just hey, I'm having a bad day. I mean, maybe your job lets you do that once or twice, but how many bad days can you call out on?
Well, you don't even need to call out, and you don't necessarily need to cry at work, but you need to be aware enough of what's going on in yourself. So, like, if you're in a job that's toxic and you're getting beat up by your boss all the time, you get to make a choice.
So that's where the awareness,
about staying in that job, and being aware that you need something, being aware that something is going on. You can take steps. Like, if you're having a really bad day at work and something happened and you just want to cry at your desk and you can't, okay, like, pull your big girl panties on and get through your day and cry in the car on the way home, or call your best friend and vent it out and talk about it. Go to a yoga class, go for a run, go to the gym, go eat a pint of ice cream. I mean, you probably don't want to do that all the time, but it is about awareness and checking in with yourself and knowing when you're getting to a point where you're being spread too thin, or you need to use your voice. And, you know, in corporate, the rules are different, and you have to be careful about what you say and how you say it, but figure out a way to say it.
Right.
Don't just stuff it down and let people keep piling it on and piling it on and piling it on, and then taking it out on your coworkers.
Yeah. That's actually great advice, because the point is, it's not the reaction. It's okay to react, but just have it be it needs to be controlled. You just can't be an unhinged reaction. And we
need the ability to have more adult conversations. Mm-hmm. More organizations need to invest in training in what they call nonviolent communication, which is, again, it comes back to the story that I'm telling myself about, or my feelings around this are, and it's being able to have a conversation without saying, well, you did this and you made me feel this. And it's all about externalizing how we're feeling. So if we could learn to communicate by accepting responsibility without being threatened, without needing to be defensive, if everybody can just figure out how to accept responsibility, be self-aware, apologize when they need to, admit when they're wrong when they need to, the world would just be such a great place. But
you figured it out.
Right. Exactly.
You figured out the sauce.
but like you said, like so many people just aren't aware.
No, it is. I think that is one good thing that I am is very self-aware. Oh, but also I think too self-aware, where it kind of gets in the way of me taking action because I'm like too scared, or I feel like I'm too underqualified, or like I think that Lisa and I were talking about it this morning. Like I need a little bit of delusion. Like maybe I'm self-aware, borderline pessimistic. Maybe it's just too real, too raw of self-awareness. I don't know. But like, I feel like people that have no self-awareness, that are almost delusional, they do things like they're bigger risk takers. They go for that job that they know they're not qualified for. They'll do it because why not? Right? That behavior. Not? I agree. But my self-awareness doesn't let me do it.
So fear is an interesting thing. When fear shows up and prevents us from moving forward in things that we're passionate about, when you think about fear, especially when it comes to like going for a job that you don't feel like you're qualified for, there's so many, you can read a million books about it, different stories, whatever. But one of the things I've learned about fear is fear will show you what's important to you. If you are afraid of going after a job because you don't feel like you're qualified, that job is important to you. There's something about that that's important. And that fear is showing up because you don't want to be disappointed. You don't want to have your feelings hurt. Or you don't
want to fail publicly.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing. For most people, it's like, are you afraid of failing? Are you afraid of people seeing you fail? And those are two very different things. Very.
It is. Yeah. Well, it has to be. For most people, it has to be the public aspect, because if I failed in private and nobody knew, what's the harm?
But you would know.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely could live with that.
It's 100 times worse.
It's worse to do it public.
And think about, like, I have a moment from when I was in the 8th grade that still sticks with me, because in that moment, I remember just being so completely embarrassed. And just like this thing in my brain was like, I don't ever want to feel this again. And what's happened as an adult is when I try to do things that I'm not good at, that fear pops up. But now I'm kind of like, okay, like I get where this is coming from. I know why this is there. What is honestly the worst thing that can happen? Like what? Seriously, grown adults are going to look at you and ridicule you and say, how could you be so stupid? That's not going to happen. We talk to ourselves that way, right. But nobody else is going to talk to us that way. And that's where, being able to face our fears and overcome our fears. And again, that's that permission. That is that self-awareness. That is that self-leadership. And in that moment, you can decide, do you want to hold yourself back because you're not qualified? If you choose to do that, okay, but live with that decision. Don't then make that decision and then beat yourself up for the next 10 years because you made the choice that you made. Whatever choice that you're making, own it and be with it. And if you don't like that choice, then make a different one, because, you can.
What about if you make the wrong one and there's regret? How do you handle regret?
Regret is something that I think you need to acknowledge, and I think you need to learn from, and then you need to let it go. I mean, seriously, you made the decision. There's an expression, it couldn't have happened any other way, because it didn't. Peter Crone said that, and I love it. It's one of the most powerful things I've ever heard. But we do. I mean, think about how much guilt and shame and regret we carry about things that we've done in our lives. And you will never be able to go back in the past and change that. So accept what happened, learn the lesson, and move forward. Grieve what you need to grieve. Feel it by all means. And, that's the thing, too, with regret, shame, guilt, all of that. If you don't allow yourself to sit with it and acknowledge that it's there and make a promise to yourself that you'll do different next time, it's just going to sit there like a pebble in your shoe, and it's just going to bother you. Yeah. But you have to let it go.
I think that someone had told me a long time ago that resentment is like that, too. Like resentment, it's like drinking poison for yourself, and the other person has no idea. Yeah, it's just literal harm to you.
Yeah, resentment, jealousy, yeah, it's like drinking poison and
just
expecting your enemy to die.
Right. And you're just doing it by yourself. Like,
Right.
you're not harming anybody but you.
You're creating your own suffering. And so
that is so powerful.
That is,
I'm gonna write that down.
that is a Buddhist philosophy. Suffering is optional, and we create our own suffering by wanting our reality to be different than what it is. And the fact of the matter is, you can want your reality to be different all you want, and you can take steps to change it, and you can do all the things. But just sitting here and regretting the way things are, nothing's ever going to change. And we are so powerful as humans. We have no idea what we're capable of. I mean, look at what some of the humans on this planet have accomplished. So, and this is where comparison culture and, scrolling through social media and everybody's got their highlight reel and all their beautifully filtered photos and thinking, wow, we sit in our average, everyday, normal life and we look at that and we're like, oh my gosh, like, what are they doing that I'm not doing? And we feel so much shame and we feel small and we feel unimportant when the fact of the matter is, like, A, none of it's true. And B, we're all wildly capable. We just need to decide.
It's also just, it's so funny that we're talking about this today because, we just had our photo shoot and I was thinking about that this morning when I posted the other video of like the behind the scenes of us ending the day and us dancing around. And I thought to myself, man, I hope this doesn't I hope someone, a woman specifically, right? Because who else is really watching it, right? I'm thinking to myself, I hope that someone isn't lonely thinking why don't I have that friend group, right? We looked our best that day, right? We're dressed up. It was a special event. We're all coordinating. We all show up there, best foot forward, but we're all individually 7 women that are struggling with our own things, right? In our own lives and stuff. And I just thought to myself, and I think that that's what social media has created, this comparison, this, and maybe it's someone that's sitting at home wondering why don't I wish I had a group of friends like that. Or what am I doing? Why can't I have that community or that, that feeling versus the woman that maybe looks at it and it's like, man, that's so awesome to see so many women together, celebrating success. It is a perception.
It is a perception. And there are always going to be women that are going to look at that and say, they're going to throw shade on it.
Sure.
And then there's always going to be women that are like, wow, that's really
so
amazing.
Beautiful.
And there's going to be everything in between. And the fact of the matter is we don't have any control over any of it.
Right.
So we sought out that friend group.
Right.
We sought out that group and called in these women and these experiences because it was what we wanted.
And we're doing something that makes us uncomfortable.
Exactly.
That whole thing, the whole event, we're going to be public speaking. All of that is a choice that we've all made to be in that environment.
And that is self-leadership.
Right.
Making that choice and then making it happen. All of us were uncomfortable yesterday.
Yeah.
I mean, the first round of photos, I looked at it and my first thing was, oh my God, when did I get so old? And then the second thought was, stop it. Why are you talking to yourself like that? But it's still it comes up. I've done the work. I've done
it's never ending.
It's never ending. But the awareness of it now,
it
doesn't shut me down because there was a time I never would have signed up or shown up for that yesterday. Not in a million years. And if I did sign up for it, I would have gotten sick or something.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, you know what? I'm going for it because I'm tired of being on the sidelines and watching somebody else do the things that I want to do.
I am in that era as well. I'm in that era as well of just what's the worst that could happen to me if I just took action? I know I'm not going to fail. It's not going to be negative. It's going to be extremely positive for my life and me as a person and professionally, just to grow. Just take action. So I love that you said that. And it's true it's just this social media thing. The episode prior to this, I had Dr. Julie on and we talked about this social media thing and it's wild. It's wild the impact it's having on us and much more on our youth. So to bring that in. Let's talk about your project. Tell me about it. Tell me the concept, why, and how can we support it?
So the concept is, like I mentioned earlier, you know, as women, we are all struggling with things that a lot of us picked up in our youth and we're still carrying with us. There are things that people said to us. There are things that we felt, successes, failures, all of the stuff. I think back to when I was growing up, when I was a teenager, and all the things that I went through, and it was really, really challenging. The failures that I had, those embarrassing moments, that was a horribly embarrassing moment for me. But the only people that knew about it were the few people that were in the room. It didn't get posted on social media. It didn't live on the internet forever. And a week later, everybody was talking about something else. Probably not even a week, the next day. So now our girls are just, and our boys too, they are inundated every single day with look like this, be like this, talk like this, don't do this. You have to, you know, if you want to be successful, you have to go to college and you have to do this. And everybody's telling them what to do and how to do it and how to look. And social media gives impossible standards that they feel like they have to look up to. And then it's like, you know, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. You know, you're friendly and you're too nice. And if you're not, you know, then there's labels everywhere. So there's an organization called ROX, Ruled Our Experiences, and they did a landmark study back in 2017, and then they repeated it back in 2023. And I'm not going to try to throw out too much of it because I don't have it in front of me and I don't want to butcher the numbers. But one of the shocking statistics in that was 50% of the girls that they had involved in this study stayed away from positions of leadership because they didn't want people to think they were bossy. And that hit me at my core because it's heartbreaking, because what we want to encourage our girls to do is to use their voice, is to be unique, because there are 8 billion people on this planet and every one of us is different. Every single one of us has a unique set of skills and gifts that nobody else has. And if you try to just follow the crowd and be like everybody else, that's all you're ever going to be. You're going to be just like everybody else. And there's a lot of competition to be like everybody else. So why not find your unique voice and stand up and see what you're capable of? Because when you look at like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, like whoever it is that you look up to and aspire to, are they like everybody else, or is there something about them that stands out? And there's something about them that stands out. They learned to cultivate who they were. So through this project that I am working on is all about bringing forward powerful, successful women. And I don't just mean like CEOs. I'm talking like CEOs, entrepreneurs, mothers, stay-at-home moms, like whatever they decided to do.
A variety of success.
Exactly.
I love that already, because I feel like involved in this hustle culture, there's almost like a lot of shaming on if you don't want to own a business, or if you don't want to do this like work for yourself thing. No, someone that wants to work the 9 to 5 and be the best at their 9, it's okay. And the one that wants the mother that wants to stay home and raise her children, that's great. That's acceptable. And there's no shame in the levels of what we choose to do. And I think that we actually were talking about that this morning. I feel like there's a little bit of like, well, you're not pushing yourself to the max, like professionally or corporate, or no. What if I don't want the promotion?
And it's like, well, where are you going to college? What if you don't want to go to college?
What if I don't want to go to college? Right. 100%. I love that you're highlighting. Success is so fleeting, first of all. Second of all, it's a different definition for everyone.
Exactly. And that's where, unless we cultivate self-awareness and self-leadership and giving them permission to explore. Because think about it, like at 18, 19, 20 years old, seriously, do you know what you want to do for the rest of your life? Doubtful. I mean, if you want to be a lawyer, or you want to be a doctor, or you want to be something that involves like years of schooling and like all of that, and hey, that's great. But a lot of people don't know. A lot of kids don't know. A lot of like this is the time in your life when you get to explore, and it's okay to have ideas and follow them through. And maybe they were successful, maybe they weren't, but we have to start encouraging our girls to use their voices and to own their uniqueness and to be okay with not being like everybody else. So I'm pulling together out of my collective reach women that have overcome stuff, women who have faced down their fears, women who have given into their fears, the whole thing, to allow them a space to find women that they can look up to, that they can aspire to be like. And like I mentioned to you earlier, an article that you wrote and something that you said last year, I think it was a pre-catalyst for this, when you said, she can't be you if she can't see you. And like that hit me so hard, because these girls should be able to just fully express and not be afraid of what anybody else is going to say to them. There is room in this world for everybody. There does not need to be any, we don't ever raise ourselves by minimizing anybody else or by knocking anybody else down. And, like we found in the Daily Drip, and, this was part of the inspiration for it. I want to build a community like that for our girls and for our boys as well, because they need it as well. I know girls, I understand girls, I am a girl. Actually talking to Romy and Nicole about this, they both have sons, and they both were like, hey, this is a problem. This is an issue with boys as well. So I want the program eventually to grow and be available for girls and boys. And, but yeah, it's time we help them to start to celebrate who they are and break this comparison culture and this follow the leader, and not even follow the leader, but follow the crowd. And your opinion can't be different from anybody else's. You can't feel different from anybody else. You have to be like everybody else to be loved and accepted, or you'll be ostracized and you'll be made fun of. And, our girls they're powerful, and we need to give them permission to use their gifts.
I think that before I share my thoughts on it, that study about the 50% being afraid to be bossy, where do you think the stigma of the bossy came from?
That's a really good question.
Do you think it's us, ourselves? Like, you don't want to be too much?
I think women are, yes. Yeah. And I think some of that comes from us projecting our own fears onto others. And again, self-awareness, self-leadership, like, not needing external validation, not needing to make yourself feel more important by making somebody else feel less important. And listen, yesterday, what were the words? Resilience, authenticity, or kindness? Like, listen, all three, all the time,
all of them.
all the time.
Yeah.
And it's scary growing up in the world right now. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of people have big opinions about things, and they're not shy about sharing them. And I'm all about having a different opinion, and I'm all about sharing your opinion. But not everybody needs to be of that opinion.
Correct.
And we can all function and get along and be different.
Right. I think that and what I hear you saying about the importance of this project, it's also to teach girls at a younger age, that at such formative age too, right? To be able to accept that what you've learned, what I've learned, right? That you're going to change. There are going to be different versions of yourself. It's okay. Love yourself through each version. You don't have to be her. You don't have to be her. You don't have to be the influencer that you're following online, right? Like,
right.
They're showing you their best. They have bad days too. I feel like that generation that's coming, that is very ingrained in social media, that's growing up on it, there's no distinction in between what's real and what's not. So they're sitting back saying, man, she never has a bad day. No, well, they're not showing you the bad days. They have equal or more, just like the rest of us. So it's also that the importance of being able to let them know what to expect, almost like, it could be painful at times. Here's how you navigate it. Here's how we accept ourselves. We love ourselves. Here's how you speak up. All of that. Nobody's teaching it.
Right. And that's where having empathy for ourselves, having compassion for ourselves, having high expectations of ourselves, 100%. But understanding, especially with social media and comparison culture, you look at this very cultivated photograph of this perfect person and this perfect situation, and you have to know, and you have to remind yourself, A, it's not real, and B, is that really even what you want?
Right.
And that's where, like, allowing yourself the space to say, you know what, like, I don't want that. I don't want that for me. I want something different. And this is what I want my life to look like. And being okay with that. Stop giving up their dreams to chase what everybody else thinks that they should do. And it's not about being selfish or self-centered. I get really fired up when I talk about self-love and people compare it to like being narcissistic or something. Putting your needs ahead of those of everybody else, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with saying, this is the space that I want to take up in the world. Being inclusive and kind and all of that, but it is okay to take up space in the world. And it is okay to stand out, and it is okay to fail. And that is the most important thing, is it is okay to fail. And we have to stop expecting everybody to be perfect and stop shutting people down when they make a mistake. Allow people to be human and live a human experience, because you're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days, and you're going to have everything in between. And most of life is the in-between.
Right. Well, I mean, I could talk to you for hours. This was amazing.
This has been amazing.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being with us. Where can everybody find you? And I'll put it in the show notes.
Okay. Online, SuzetteBravo.com. I am Instagram and LinkedIn. I hang out a little bit on Facebook, but not so much. But Instagram is Suzette K. Bravo. LinkedIn, same thing. I mean, if you Google my name, you'll pretty much find me.
Thank you so much. You're special.
Thanks,
and
Ciara.
I appreciate you.
You're special too, and I appreciate you.
It's been a fun ride with the Daily Drip, and I'm grateful for that community also, but you as a person. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.